ओके सो वेलकम टू यू ऑल टू दिस प्लेटफॉर्म जिसमें कि हम लोग डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं कि हमारी अभी की ट्रेड का क्या हुआ जो कि हम लोगों ने एग्जीक्यूट की हुई है 1781.03 के लेवल्स पे बाय किया हुआ है और प्राइजेस 1780.9293 के लेवल्स पे इसको डिस्कस करेंगे, साथ ही न्यूज़ एनालिसिस देखेंगे। डिस्कस करने से पहले एक बार जानना चाहेंगे आवाज़ और स्क्रीन क्लियरली विजिबल ऑडिबल है? इफ़ यस काइंडली प्रेस 40 ताकि हम लोग सेशन यहाँ से कंटिन्यू कर सकें। ओके ग्रेट। सो हम लोग मार्केट का मूव देख रहे हैं। मार्केट हमारी 1780.5354 के लेवल्स पे 3 मिनट बाद इस कैंडल की क्लोजिंग का टाइम है। थोड़ा सा वेट करेंगे, देखेंगे उसका मूव और उसके बाद आगे की चीज़ें हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे कंटिन्यूअसली। देख सकते हैं वापस से एक शॉर्ट ग्रीन डोजी कैंडल लगातार हम लोग को 1 से 1.5 घंटे से मार्केट कंसोलिडेशन के साथ देखने को मिली। यूजुअली इस टाइम ऐसा मूव नहीं देखने को मिलता, बट आज देखने को मिल रहा है। एक दूसरी कैंडल फॉर्मेशन 1780.0508 के लेवल्स पे। मार्केट से जिस मूव की हम लोग एक्सपेक्टेशन कर रहे हैं वो मूव हमें देखने को नहीं मिला। ओके, सो प्राइसेस स्लाइटली मूव ही करते हुए दिख रहे हैं। हम लोग आ जाते हैं अपने न्यूज़ सेक्शन पे। सो सबसे पहले हम लोग डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं गोल्ड न्यूज़ netdenia.com। सॉरी, इट्स goldnetdenia.com। सो goldnetdenia.com पे गोल्ड के प्राइसेस 1780.08 के लेवल्स पे अपनी ओपनिंग से 1.38 पॉइंट्स की गिरावट के साथ 0.07% की गिरावट के साथ आज की रेंज की बात करें तो 1776.48 का लो बनाते हुए 1789.43 तक का हाई बनाया। ओपनिंग 1781.46, प्रीवियस क्लोजिंग 1781.46, दैट इज सेम। एंड ईयर वाइज चेंजेस की बात करें तो 114.62 पॉइंट्स की गिरावट के साथ और 6.04% की गिरावट के साथ वॉल्यूम जो ट्रेड करते हुए दिख रहा है 38 लैक्स के आसपास देखने को मिल रहा है। 52 वीक्स लो। एंड आ जाते हैं ग्लोबल मार्केट का मूव देखने तो बहुत ही रेड सिग्नल के साथ आज मार्केट्स मूव करती हुई दिखी है। US 30 हमारा नेगेटिव, बिटकॉइन नेगेटिव, इसके साथ शंघाई एससी पॉजिटिव, UK 100 नेगेटिव, डैक्स 30 नेगेटिव। निकाई 225 डाउन, निफ्टी 50 आज हमारी 18,178 पे पहुंच चुकी है, जो कि अभी तक आज का हाई बनाया था 18,384 पे। लेकिन अगर हम लोग लाइफ टाइम हाई की बात करते हैं तो हमारा 52 वीक्स है 18,604 पे था आज, बहुत ही ज़्यादा गिरावट। एएसएक्स 200 डाउन, एफआरए 40 डाउन, इसके साथ स्विस एमआई 20 पॉजिटिव, यूके ऑयल नेगेटिव, डब्ल्यूटीआई क्रूड डाउन, यूएस डॉलर इंडेक्स पॉजिटिव, जिसकी वजह से गोल्ड अभी डाउन होते हुए 1780.11 के लेवल्स पे। सिल्वर स्पॉट भी डाउन अभी, और प्लेटिनम पैलेडियम भी दोनों ही डाउन होते हुए दिख रहे हैं। डिस्कस करते हैं गोल्ड न्यूज एफएक्स स्ट्रीट। So XAUUSD struggled for direction, flat lined above 1780. So the risk of impulse in the market extended some support to the safe haven gold. Elevated US bond, modest US strength kept the upside for the metal. Bulls need to wait for a move beyond 1800 mark for placing fresh bets. तो हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि बुलिश साइड जाने के लिए सबसे पहले हम लोग को देखना पड़ेगा कि 1800 का लेवल ब्रेक होते हुए देखा और सस्टेन करे, क्योंकि बहुत बार क्या हुआ 1800 का लेवल पहुंचने के बाद भी मार्केट नेक्स्ट डे पूरी तरीके से करेक्ट हो जाती है, तो ऐसी सिचुएशन में हम लोग बुलिश मूवमेंट नहीं देख सकते। प्राइसेस स्लाइट अपसाइड मूव करते हुए, लेकिन अभी हमारी पोजीशन प्रॉफिट्स में कन्वर्ट होती हुई नहीं दिखी है। 1781.1819 के लेवल्स पे प्राइसेस मूव करते हुए। प्राइसेस स्लाइट अपसाइड मूव कर रहे हैं, हमारी पोजीशंस प्रॉफिट में आ चुकी है, लेकिन वेट करेंगे थोड़ा सा और प्रॉफिट जनरेट होने का। आ जाते हैं हम लोग गोल्डन एफएक्स स्ट्रीट पे। सो फ्रॉम अ टेक्निकल पर्सपेक्टिव, Bulls might still wait for a sustained move beyond 1800 confluence hurdle before placing fresh bids. The mentioned handle compromises technically significant 100 to 200 simple moving average, which, if cleared decisively, will set the stage for additional gains. The next relevant barrier is pegged near the 1808 to 1810 region, above which gold seems all set to accelerate the momentum towards challenging the 1832 to 34 heavy supply zone. On the flip side, any meaningful pullback is likely to find decent support near the 1775, and some follow through weakness could drag gold prices back towards 1763 to 60 region. तो हम लोग देख रहे हैं अगर 1780s के लेवल नहीं बनते हैं तो अगर डाउन साइड मार्केट जाती है तो 1775 एक अच्छा सपोर्ट रहेगा, और अगर इसको ब्रेक करता है तो 1763 1760 के लेवल्स देखने को मिल सकते हैं. Failure to defend the mentioned support levels will negate any near term positive bias and prompt aggressive technical selling. This in turn will expose the 1750 support zone before the XAU USD eventually drops further towards September monthly swing lows around the 1723 to 21 region. Fundamentals की बात करें so gold reversed an early North American session dipped to the 1776 area and turned positive for the third successive day. Though remained below weekly tops touched earlier this Thursday, currently hovering around the 1782 to 83 region. The risk of impulse in the market turned out to be a key factor that acted as a tailwind for the safe haven precious metal. Investors turned nervous amid fresh concerns about potential contain from China Evergrande debt crisis. The heavily indebted developer said on Wednesday that a $2.6 billion stake in its property services unit failed. However, the market reaction so far has been limited amid reports that Evergrande has won more than a 3-month extension to a maturity of a 260 million bond. Moreover, Chinese officials said trouble in the sector would not be allowed to accelerate into a full blown crisis. तो हम लोग डिस्कस करते हैं एक छोटी सी क्लिप और देखेंगे उसमें कि क्लिप में क्या देखने को मिल रहा है.
Kitco News special coverage of the Future Blockchain Summit is brought to you by Cook Finance. A revolution in DeFi asset management.
I'm here with Chris Voss, CEO of the Black Swan Group and author of the well-renowned book, Never Split the Difference. Chris, welcome to Kitco.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, pleasure. Pleasure to have you here in Dubai, the Future Blockchain Summit. But you and I aren't going to be talking about blockchain per se. We're going to be talking about negotiations, how that applies to business, your everyday life, and of course, nation states. Many of our viewers want to know what's going on in the geopolitical stage states. Let's talk about your negotiation strategy. I know you've given talks about how that affects your everyday life. Let's just start from the top. Optimal strategies to negotiate, because I know you've talked about it. We're negotiating every day with our spouses, with our loved ones, with our boss, with our clients. How does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but hear the other side out first. And it's tactical empathy is what we talk about in the book. But in empathy in general, most people think empathy is just putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Now that's only the beginning. Once you put yourself in their shoes, then tell them what you think their perspective is, what they see, what they feel. So take the next step. After you put yourself in their shoes, see if you can repeat back to them how the world looks to them. Let them feel heard. It sounds really counterintuitive, but people don't really buy that you understand until you show them.
Yeah.
And you show them by basically repeating it back to them. And you'll be astonished at how quickly that accelerates your interactions.
It sounds to me like it might be a personality trait that the best negotiators you're suggesting could be good empathizers.
Yeah.
Of course, not everybody is. Would that be a true statement to make, that some people are just naturally more gifted at negotiating than others?
Well, I'm of the belief that there's nothing natural, that it's all learned. Like when we're born, we're pretty much a blank slate. What did you learn along the way? Now, I realize that like you can't learn to be 7 feet tall, or you can't teach me how to be American professional football lineman. I'm never going to be that big.
Yeah.
But the rest of the stuff, anybody could probably learn it. And I'm a big believer that all you got to do is be willing to learn.
Right. Well, let's talk about a real life example then. Let's talk about negotiating with a client, for example. You're striking a deal. You're deciding you're deciding to buy out the company. You're deciding on the value, right? I'm the buyer, you're the seller. Let's talk about the value. How much should I be paying? How much should you be selling?
Yeah, well, my value is really going to be based on my perception of how the future is going to work out.
Yeah.
So if I'm buying from you, you're going to be taking the same perspective.
Right.
I need to get out of your head what you're seeing. And that's the whole point about empathy. I'll start guessing out loud what's in your head. You're either going to tell me I'm right, or the really funny thing about it is when I'm wrong, you'll correct me and put me on the right track. Then that creates collaboration, and then ideally we both end up with a better deal.
And of course, negotiating with your boss and a raise, that's something that most people have to encounter or do every once in a while. How does that play out?
Well, don't ask your boss for more money, ask your boss for a better future. Salary pays your bills, but it doesn't build your career.
Yeah.
And your boss is going to help you build your career if you're trying to make the company better. How do you do that? This simple phrase.
Yeah.
How can I be guaranteed to be involved in projects that are critical to our strategic future? Now all of a sudden your boss goes, wait a minute, you want to help everybody and me? That automatically makes you more valuable. Plus it gives you the opportunity to work on a really important projects which will either accelerate your career in the company or give you such a great resume you can go someplace else.
Interesting. Now, John Nash won the Nobel Prize in Economics for his work on game theory. The Nash equilibrium, similar to the prisoner's dilemma, indicate that people compromise every day in their negotiations. We take the second best option for me, you take the second best option for you. Neither of us are optimally benefiting ourselves, but we come to some sort of compromise. Is that true? Have you observed that? Does that theory actually play out in real life?
Well, why do people compromise? Principally, they're trying to eliminate or minimize combat. What everybody kind of agrees on long term, that combat in negotiations is a bad idea. You got a real bad, quick downward spiral over aggressive negotiations, over winner-take-all negotiators. If you're a winner-take-all negotiator and everybody that deals with you loses, nobody wants to deal with you. So you get to a compromise as a default mode to try to minimize the pain. The problem is that's a slower downward spiral. Now, collaboration is the next step up. You don't see collaborative negotiations very many places, so people just don't know how to do it. But as soon as you learn how to do it, that's how you get into the upward spiral. How do we make a better deal? That's what I'm really after.
Let's talk about negotiations on the global stage now. Nation states, of course, are negotiating every day with each other. One of the badly. Okay, well, why do you think they're doing it badly? Let's talk about that.
Just arguments back and forth. Most world leaders, we got a saying in the United States, preaching to the choir. They want to say things that people that come to their rallies jump up and down and cheer and scream for. The problem is the people that come to their rallies aren't who they're negotiating with. Those are their supporters. They're on their side anyway. But then it gets into a shouting match, and that's how you get into compromise with politicians. If compromise was great, every citizen would be proud of their government. Ask an American, you think your politicians are doing a great job? Doesn't matter on which side of the aisle they're on. They're going to say, no, they're doing a horrible job.
Right.
That's what compromise gets you.
Sure.
And very few people understand that expressing the other side's point of view actually makes better deals.
Right. Well, we see this in the White House all the time. They're disagreeing on a lot of things, the debt ceiling, how to fund the government, the infrastructure bill. We're seeing, a lot of examples playing out on both sides of the aisle. They're having disagreements, but what do they actually want for each other, for themselves? How do they come to a middle ground? Are they even doing a good job in coming to a middle ground? Because some people say they're not, and they're just stalling everything.
No, they've never really done a good job. And it is a stall. And I think we're coming out of slowly coming out of the combative political environment that we had in the United States for the last 4 years. I think President Biden, he doesn't like combat. Like the one thing he did that I really liked recently was he had to come out in support of the genocide in what's known as the genocide in Turkey over the Armenians. That's been something that's been lurking there for a long time that no politicians really wanted to come close to. Now, when he finally said something in support of it, what he did well was the leader of Turkey knew it was coming. He didn't let him get caught off guard. And it's an extremely emotional issue for Turkey. Now, he's got to wade into this, but he doesn't let the political leaders on the other side of the table get blindsided by this, hear it out of the blue. So the leader of Turkey, and forgive me for not being able to say his name properly, I'd embarrass myself by mispronouncing it. The world was really surprised at how muted his response was, because President Biden didn't let him get caught off guard. He knew it was coming. So that was actually a respectful way to approach a very emotional international issue. I'm encouraged that he did that.
Well, what do you think, just on that topic, and we'll move on, what do you think was going on through Biden's head when he withdrew from Afghanistan? There was tremendous pressure on both sides to either stay or leave.
Well, it became a downward spiral for the U.S. So the U.S. had to, I'm not saying that we did it well, but ultimately the U.S. has got to get out of Afghanistan. We got no business being in that country. We've known that for a long time, haven't really been able to extricate ourselves from that. Nobody in the region really wants us there. What's America doing in another part of the world trying to tell a country how to run themselves? Overall, that's a bad idea. Now, how do we get out of that situation? Well, particularly with the previous administration putting 5,000 combatants back on a battlefield. Right. People are surprised that the government of Afghanistan and the military folded up so quickly when the previous administration dropped 5,000 combatants back on the battlefield. What did we expect those guys to do as a result of that kind of a change? It was a bad situation that had to be addressed at some point in time. Nobody said it wasn't supposed to be done. The argument is over when and how it was done, not that it needed to be done.
One of the largest geopolitical risks today, for investors at least, is the tension between U.S. and China, the next rising global superpower economy, whatever you want to call it. I think the Chinese government have indirectly or maybe even directly stated that they want to supplant the US in both political and economic power. Of course, the Americans don't want that to happen. So we've got a bit of a stalemate, if you want to call it that. If you were in the White House, how would you be negotiating with Xi Jinping on economic, political, or even military issues?
You know, I'd actually be talking more to my top level business people, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to feed their family. They want a better life for themselves and their children. They want a nicer house. They want better education for their kids. You take that approach, you know, a business-oriented approach to solving world problems, peace through prosperity, then it changes the game. I think get out of this combative, my government's better than your government, our form of government by definition is morally superior to yours. Get out of that conversation and get into economic welfare.
But that's not what happened in the last 4 or 5 years. We saw trade wars, we saw tariffs, we saw bans and restrictions on both sides. I mean, how do we get out of that?
You got to be willing to take the first step. Now, do we have any politicians that are willing to take the first step economically? You know, as crazy as it was, you know, Trump used to always say, make America great again. You know, he once said, make Iran great again. He's like, if you guys sit down and cut a deal with us where we're not fighting each other militarily, I don't have a problem with you guys prospering economically if you're not taking money away from us.
Right.
There's enough wealth to go around in this world if politicians will just see it that way.
Let's apply.
The region really wants us there. You know, what's America doing in another part of the world trying to tell a country how to run themselves? You know, overall, that's a bad idea. Now, how do we get out of that situation? Well, particularly with the previous administration putting 5,000 combatants back on a battlefield. Right. People are surprised that the government of Afghanistan and the military folded up so quickly when the previous administration dropped 5,000 combatants back on the battlefield. What did we expect those guys to do as a result of that kind of a change? I mean, it was a bad situation that had to be addressed at some point in time. Nobody said it wasn't supposed to be done. The argument is over when and how it was done, not that it needed to be done.
One of the largest geopolitical risks today, for investors at least, is the tension between US and China, the next rising global superpower economy, whatever you want to call it. I think the Chinese government have indirectly or maybe even directly stated that they want to supplant the US in both political and economic power. Of course, the Americans don't want that to happen. So we've got a bit of a stalemate, if you want to call it that. If you were in the White House, how would you be negotiating with Xi Jinping on economic, political, or even military issues?
You know, I'd actually be talking more to my top level business people, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to feed their family. They want a better life for themselves and their children. They want a nicer house. They want better education for their kids. You take that approach, you know, a business-oriented approach to solving world problems, peace through prosperity, then it changes the game. I think get out of this combative, my government's better than your government, our form of government by definition is morally superior to yours. Get out of that conversation and get into economic welfare.
But that's not what happened in the last 4 or 5 years. We saw trade wars, we saw tariffs, we saw bans and restrictions on both sides. I mean, how do we get out of that?
You got to be willing to take the first step. Now, do we have any politicians that are willing to take the first step economically? You know, as crazy as it was, you know, Trump used to always say, make America great again. You know, he once said, make Iran great again. He's like, if you guys sit down and cut a deal with us where we're not fighting each other militarily, I don't have a problem with you guys prospering economically if you're not taking money away from us.
Right.
There's enough wealth to go around in this world if politicians will just see it that way.
Let's apply your negotiation tactics to this example. So if I'm negotiating with somebody in real life, there's always a minute chance of violence or physical confrontation. I mean, it's very small, but it's non-zero. That chance is larger on the political stage when you're dealing with military powers. Is there a chance that China and the US could actually be in a military conflict because negotiations go sour?
My personal opinion, I don't think China has any interest in a military conflict. They've got economic ambitions. So does every other country in the world. Historically, they haven't been ambitious militarily in their history. Outside of China, you know, China is not sailing boats across the ocean and setting up colonies in other countries. They are very protective of what they see as their own political, their own geographical turf. Who isn't? As soon as we start taking looking at people through a little bit different lens, how do they see the world? And I think a lot of this becomes a lot easier to understand.
All right. Now, in your career, based on the people you've worked with and observed, who was probably the best negotiator in business, politics, or just your everyday life? And what do they do right?
I think one of the, excuse me, sorry. Based on what they've accomplished, based on where they started and where they ended up, I think Oprah Winfrey is one of the greatest negotiators
No way.
in the world.
All right. What did she do?
I mean, first of all, look at her net worth. And look at what are her demographics. Black female, I think from Chicago, starting in a low income environment. She started with less than zero. And where is she today? Plus the other thing that a lot of people miss about Oprah is, who do you know that's had an argument with her publicly that's lasted? Oprah's into long-term relationships. She's into collaborating with people. There's no way that people haven't been unhappy with her. There's no way that she hasn't been unhappy with other people. Do you hear about it? She knows that open air arguments, leaving people feel bruised, is a bad idea. So she doesn't do it. I'm really impressed with what she's accomplished in her life.
She should be at the blockchain conference. She'd do well. You get free Bitcoin. You get free Bitcoin. Everybody gets free Bitcoin. That's a very interesting take. How do we apply her life lessons to somebody who wants to succeed in their business career?
Actually, in the Black Swan group, we've got a rule we call the Oprah rule.
Okay.
Which is the last impression is the lasting impression. And I heard this directly from one of the people that a friend of mine is Cindy Morey. She's been Oprah's booker for 19 years. I met her in LA. We're sitting around talking about this. She says most entertainment industry people in a limo, out in a taxi. When they want something from you, they treat you like gold. They're nice to you. As soon as they have it, they forget about you. Excuse me. Oprah's rule was in a limo, out in a limo. No matter what happened with her, everybody, especially when they left, had to feel that they were treated with respect and in high esteem. And I have been told that in several pointed conversations that Oprah's had with highly volatile celebrities, her last line has always been, understand that no matter what happens, I will always love you and I will always support you. The last impression is the lasting impression. No matter how combative the interaction is if you finish with genuine positive regard, that's how you end up a billionaire.
Wow, great. Now, finally, I know you've talked about this before on your own shows and your own interviews and speeches, but I know you've worked with the FBI. How do you know that somebody is lying?
It isn't that hard to tell that somebody's lying. The hard part is getting them out of it. People have a tendency to lie defensively. They don't know how to tell the truth because the truth is harsh. That's why there's a counterfeit yes. Do you want to do this deal? Yeah. Really, when I want to know more about the deal. So how do you make people feel safe so that they can tell you the truth? Actually, take your time. As a general rule, somebody's lying the more they talk, the more they try to convince you. We call that the Pinocchio effect. Pinocchio's nose got longer every time he told a lie. Right. Well, the more people talk, they know they're lying, so they work harder to convince you. So it tends to correlate with someone who's deceiving you. The harder they work to convince you because they're worried that you're not going to believe them because they know they're lying. It's not that hard to spot a liar. The hard part is if you're lying just out of sheer defensiveness, not because you're trying to cheat me, because you're afraid to tell me the truth. How do I get you to tell me the truth? And what it really boils down to is
तो देख सकते हैं गोल्ड 1781.7980 के लेवल्स पे मूव करते हैं फिलहाल। सो वी वर डिस्कसिंग कि डिफरेंस क्या है, तो स्पॉट गोल्ड वाज वर्सेस गोल्ड फ्यूचर प्राइसेस। सो द डिफरेंस इज डिटरमाइंड बाय द नंबर ऑफ डेज to delivery contract date, prevailing interest rate, and the strength of the market demand for immediate physical delivery. The difference between the spot price and the future price when expressed as an annual percentage rate is known as the forward rate. Change, so this is the change in the price of the metal from the previous close, which is not necessarily the previous day. Weekdays from 6 p.m. North New York time until midnight, the previous close is from the current day. Here is why the time to gold market stops trading in New York on weekends is for a 60-minute period from 5 p.m. New York time until 6 p.m. We use the last quote at 5 p.m. as the close of that given day. Change is always difference between the current price and the price at 5 p.m. For example, gold has last traded at $1200 at 5 p.m. on January 17. If it is January 17 at 6:30 p.m. and the price at 1202, we will show a change of $2. If it is January 18 at 5 p.m. and gold is quoted as 1225, then we would show a change of $25 at that time. Gold future change. So this is the change in the price of metal from the price at the end of the previous trading session. Currently, the weekday closing time is 2 p.m. Eastern time. 30-day change. So this is the change in the price of metal from 30 days ago as opposed from the previous close. 1 year change. So this is the change in the price of metal from a year ago today as opposed from the previous close. How is the live gold price calculated? So every precious metal market has a corresponding benchmark price that is set on the a daily basis. The benchmark are used mostly for commercial contract and producer and agreements. These benchmark are calculated partly from trading activity and in the spot market. So an OTC is not a formal exchange and prices are negotiated directly between participants and most of the transaction taking place electronically. Although these are not regulated, financial institutions play an important role acting as market makers, providing a bid and ask price in the spot market. Gold traded 24/7. So I have heard that gold traded 24/7. Is that true? Is there an open and a close? Gold actually traded 23 hours a day, Sunday through Friday. Most OTC market overlap each other. There is a 1 hour period between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time where no market is actively trading. Gold traded 24/7. So, however, despite this 1 hour close, because the spot is traded on a spot OTC market, there are no official opening or closing prices. For larger transactions, most precious metal traders will use a benchmark price that is taken at a specific periods during the trading day. आ जाते हैं MT4 टर्मिनल पे, तो प्राइजेस वापस से 1781 की लेवल्स पे। ओके, सो हम लोग आ जाते हैं गोल्ड न्यूज reuters.com पे। So precious gold steadies as inflation worries counter rising yields. So US 10-year Treasury yield at month peak. Palladium plunged nearly 3%. Gold prices steadied in choppy trade on Thursday as inflation worries and renewed concerns about China's property sector offset pressure from rising US bond yields. Spot gold was little changed at $1780.10 per ounce by 10:39 a.m. EDT. US gold futures for December delivery fell 0.25% to $1780.50 per ounce. The Fed is going to taper and yields are going to make an all-time high, so there is no reason for people to park their money in a non-yielding safety asset as like gold. US benchmark 10 years treasury yields climbed to a 5-month peak while the dollar index held steady against key rivals. While gold is often considered as an inflation hedge, reduced stimulus and interest rate hikes push government bond yield up, raising the opportunity cost of holding non-yielding billion. Stable, said Evergrande's share ending the session 12.5% lower, a positive case for gold. Equity markets across Asia and Europe fell after Evergrande said late on Wednesday that it had scrapped a deal to sell a 50.1% stake in its property service arm, and as inflation worries also took a toll on the markets. UBS analyst said in a note that rising inflation expectation and softening growth expectation could support gold prices in the next month or two. Two usual US Federal Reserve officials said on Wednesday that while the central bank should begin winding down its stimulus measure, it was too soon for interest rate hikes. Among other precious metals, spot silver fell 0.8% to $24.07 per ounce, and platinum declined 0.5% to $1045.02 per ounce. Spot platinum fell 2.8% to $2013.03 per ounce. MT4 टर्मिनल पे आता है तो प्राइसेस वापस से थोड़ी सी करेक्शन 1780.66 के लेवल्स पे मूव करते हुए। इस कैंडल के भी 2 मिनट के बाद क्लोजिंग का टाइम। फिर एक दूसरी कैंडल फॉर्मेशन 1780.5456 के लेवल्स पे। सो हम लोग डिस्कस करते हैं अपने सेशन की लास्ट चीज। So points to be discussed: bid and ask price for the gold. Is there a gold benchmark? Gold fixes and the Shanghai fix. What is OJET? Gram, kilo, tola, etc. What are silver and gold prices so different? What is the price of the gold and silver ratio? So bid and ask price for the gold. So what is the bid price for gold? The bid price is the highest price someone is willing to pay for an ounce of gold. तो हम लोग देख रहे हैं बिड प्राइस वो प्राइस होता है हाईएस्ट प्राइस जिसपे कोई पर्सन इच्छा रखता है गोल्ड को खरीदने के लिए। आस्क प्राइस वो है तो लोएस्ट प्राइस जिस पे वो सेल करने को रेडी है. What does the spread mean for the gold price per ounce today? So the spread is the difference between the bid and ask price. तो हम लोग देखते हैं जिस प्राइस पे खरीदने वाला और जिस प्राइस पे बेचने वाला है उसके बीच का जो डिफरेंस है, उसके बीच का जो गैप है उसको स्प्रेड कहते हैं. Both gold and silver are fairly liquid markets, so traders can expect to see a fairly narrow spread in these markets. However, other precious metals may have wider spread, reflecting the more liquid market participants. So is there a gold benchmark? Because there is no official closing or opening price for the gold or silver. Market price rely on the benchmark prices set during different times of the day by different organizations. These benchmarks are also referred to as fixings. The London Bullion Market Association is the leading organization that is responsible for maintaining benchmark for all precious metals. The LBMA gold price, the LBMA silver price, and the LBMA PGM price are widely accepted benchmark in the precious metal space. Kitco.com also provides a variety of benchmark prices for gold and silver. The benchmark price is determined twice daily in an electronic auction between participating banks with the LBMA, which is administered by ICE Benchmark Administration. Gold fixes. So, for almost 100 years, the main gold benchmark price was set by the London Gold Fix. The price was determined in a closed physical auction among bullion markets. A price is determined after most buy orders passed for sell orders. These auctions would take place twice daily, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, London, England. So, however, the London Gold Fix shut down in the 2015 and the responsibility for maintaining the process fell to LBMA, which created the LBMA gold price on March 2015. The association shifted the price matching mechanism from a physical auction to an open electronic auction among its members. The benchmark is still set twice a day at 10:30 a.m. and then at 3 p.m. London time. There are 13 participating banks, including the Bank of China, Bank on Communications, China Construction Bank, Goldman Sachs International, HBSC Bank, USANA, ICBC Standard Bank, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Society General. Shanghai Fix, though launched in the 2016, the benchmark price mechanism in China is known as the Shanghai Gold Benchmark Price. The price settling follows the same process as the London gold price in that the price is set twice daily. However, it is denominated in yuan rather than US dollars. The price is also derived from a 1 kg contract. The benchmark is listed on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Are the gold prices per ounce are the same around the globe? So 1 troy ounce of gold is the same around the world, and for the larger fraction are usually priced in the US dollars as that is the most active market. However, the value of an ounce of gold can be higher or lower based on value of nation's currency. Traditionally, currencies are stronger than the US dollar have a lower value gold. Price where currencies that are lower than US dollar have a higher prices. While gold is most quoted in ounces per ounce US dollar, OTC market is and other countries also offer other ways options. So, are the gold prices per ounce the same around the globe? So, the Kitco Gold Index is an exclusive features that calculate the relative worth of 1 ounce of gold by removing the impact of the value of US dollar index. The Kitco Gold Index is the price of gold measured not in the term of US dollars but rather in terms of same weighted basket of currencies that determine the US dollar index. So, what is OJET, gram, kilo, tola? So, gold and most precious metals are quoted in troy ounces. However, countries that are adopted the metric system price gold in grams, kilograms, and tons. So 1 gram equals 0.32151 trions, 1 kg equals 32.150747 trions, 1 tons equals 3212150746 trions, tile 1.203370 trions, 1 tola equals 0.7374 trions, though not as popular as kilograms and grams. Tile is weight measurement in China. The tola is a weight measurement in South Asia. What is the difference between an ounce and a tri-ounce when looking at a gold chart? So a tri-ounce is usually basically is the weighing and price of precious metal, and it is dated back to the Roman Empire when currencies were valued at weight. The process were carried over to the British Empire where 1 pound sterling was worth 1 troy pound of silver. The US Mint adopted the tri-ounce system in 1828. A tri-ounce is about slightly heavier than the imperial ounce, about 10%. An imperial ounce equals 28.35 grams, while a tri-ounce is equal to 31.1 gram. So अगर आप लोग की साइड से कोई भी क्वेरी हो तो कमेंट सेक्शन में मेंशन कर सकते हैं. If there is any query from your side, you can just mention in the chat box, or else type 100 me to end this session right here. ओके, सो हम लोग आज का सेशन यहीं पे एंड करेंगे और बाकी की चीज़ें कल के सेशन में डिस्कस करेंगे कि आगे का मूव कैसा रहा और बाकी की न्यूज़ एंड एनालिसिस. सो तब तक के लिए थैंक यू सो मच फॉर joining and concentrating and for your precious time. I am ending this session and leaving this meeting for all right now. Right here. Thanks. Thank you so much.